Royal Fire Service holding a news conference now, an update on this bushfire situation. Let's go to it.
Two fires at emergency warning, being the Gospers mountain fire, particularly for the communities up around the Bilpin area on the Bells line of road, and more particularly the community north of Bilpin called Itchenstoke, where fire has now isolated that community, and the alerts were going out for people to shelter in place as the fire approaches. This other fire, the Green Wattle Creek fire, southwest of Sydney, has broken out today and headed east, southeast, through the community of Balmoral, crossing the railway line and extending much further to the east towards Bargo, Tarmoor, and places like Pheasant's Nest. Considerable fire activity, reports of many structures, many buildings being impacted, including some homes. The advice I've got is that those properties being heavily impacted include a number of local members, local firefighters' homes, as well as others in the community. I've also had reports of a crew that was overrun by fire near the Bargo area, with a number of crew members suffering serious burn injuries. Those injuries are reported to 3 people in particular, 2 males with face and airway burns, and some other burns to different parts of the body, such as arms, elbow, upper chest, and a leg, I understand. They are all members were alert and conscious. However, given the serious potential for airway burns, the advice is medically they'll be intubated. And the 2 seriously burnt people are being airlifted to Burns Hospital. The third person, she is suffering some burns, smoke inhalation and minor burns, and being transported by road ambulance to hospital for treatment. The other 2 members of the crew was reported as smoke inhalation and were treated by ambulance specialists on scene. That fire is still particularly busy and active, and the southerly change is just starting to impact across that fire ground now, and there are concerns that that will spread the fire further to the north towards the township and the community of Tarmoor. So we've still got many hours of difficult activity throughout the day and into tonight before we see any easing of conditions into tomorrow, before we can expect to see a worse day again on Saturday, as we've been indicating.
Do we know if the crew were actively doing the time?
The advice I've got is they were one of many dozens of trucks in the area working to protect homes. My advice is that the crews were operating, and this particular crew, a crew of 5, were overrun by fire, enveloped by fire. They were first treated by their fire and rescue counterparts who were close by with first aid, before being transported to the local showground, where ambulance paramedics arrived on scene to triage and treat and assess the injuries. And then, as I say, they were prioritised based on the burn injuries, with 2 being airlifted for treatment to a Burns Hospital, the third being transported via road, and the other 2 being dealt with on site by ambulance for smoke inhalation. I haven't got the details of that at this stage, and I don't even want to speculate because I just don't know exactly where they'll end up. But they're obviously, given the circumstances, they'll be receiving appropriately the very best of care.
Those 2 who were airlifted, so is their condition serious, or what do you know about that?
So as I indicated, they've suffered face burns and airway burns. Any airway burn is always treated as serious, and as a matter of fact, the intubation of airway burns is a precautionary measure because the swelling can occur pretty quickly after the burn injury and prevent breathing. So intubation I'm being advised is occurring, which means they'll be sedated, obviously, and then they'll be airlifted to hospital for treatment. So yes, they're serious, and obviously we're treating them that way, but they've got the very best attention and they'll continue to get the very best of care. So the 2 males, we've got a 36-year-old and a 56-year-old male being airlifted with serious facial and airway burns, and a 28-year-old female with smoke inhalation and minor burns is what it's been described to me. She's being transported by road to hospital for treatment and assessment.
About what time did that happen?
That happened only in the last couple of hours.
Other crews in the area say?
The other crews in the area are still very active and actively involved in a fairly vigorous and fast-moving fire front. That fire front has been spreading very quickly and intensely in an easterly direction, east-northeasterly direction under these west-southwesterly winds. That is now being impacted by a southerly change, which makes for an increasing level of danger because you get increased volatility, you get erratic fire behaviour, and you get dramatic changes in fire intensity and fire spread. So it's still a very difficult and dangerous set of circumstances in and around that fire ground, both for firefighters and emergency services and also for the communities in and around that area being impacted.
Are there still concerns that the Gospers Mountain fire and the Green Wattle Creek will merge?
No, not at this stage. The Gospers fire is on the northern side of the Blue Mountains region. The Green Wattle Creek fire is on the southern side. It has merged at the back end with what we call the Ruin Castle fire, which is burning up to the southwest of Katoomba in the back end of the mountains. They are connected, but no, they're quite separated north-south with the Blue Mountains running right between the two of them.
What can you tell us about the community of,
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So the community of Itchenstoke, which is north of Bilpin, which is up on the Bells line of road, it has become isolated today as the fire activity intensified and moved to the east. That cut off the only road in and out of the small community of Itchenstoke. The alert messages went out to alert those people of the fact that their access had been cut off and that the potential was for fire to impact in and around their homes, in and around their facilities. So the advice was to shelter in place as the fire approaches. I also understand that some of our aircraft, particularly working with our Defence Force, with that search and rescue teams I spoke about this morning, the advice I got was that they were touching down in that area and helping to extract a few people that wanted to be relocated out of that vicinity of Itchenstoke, and that was safely done, as I understand it.
So there were defence.
So we've got a combination of RFS dedicated aircraft and Defence Force helicopters, both helicopters, and they've got down-the-wire technicians or rescue-type personnel on board those machines, and where they can, they scout ahead of the main fire front, and they come in low, they alert people, and where appropriate, they provide a rescue or extraction service, which is what we did on this occasion, and we've been doing that across fire grounds on and off for weeks and months now. But this afternoon, I understand that's what's occurred up in the Itchenstoke area.
Where you believe you've lost buildings and so forth, where is that concentrated?
That seems to be concentrated down around the Bargo area, east of the Balmoral area, where the fires run out from Balmoral out through Bargo and south of Tarmoor there and in towards that Pheasant's Nest area. We've got indications of quite a considerable amount of property being impacted where the fire's moving through and impacting right across a fairly broad area of the landscape down there. And there's everything from people's homes, people's businesses, there's poultry farming operations, there's all manner of enterprise that is productive through southwestern Sydney, and there are lots of buildings, including people's homes and livelihoods, that are being impacted by this fire this afternoon. No, I don't. I was looking at some of the aerial imagery and some of the aerial scans and getting some feedback from troops on the ground. It would appear to be many buildings. I suspect we're probably talking in the vicinity of dozens. What that is in terms of homes, sheds, facilities, I just simply don't have that detail at this stage. It's too fast and unfolding as we speak.
What has allowed you to potentially downgrade the Currowan and Tianjara fires?
So the principal risk for those two fires was the strong prevailing west and southwesterly winds, which were fanning that fire in the direction of populated centres, such as Ulladulla and further up north around Wandandian. Once the southerlies moved through, it's prevented or slowed down that spread in an easterly direction, and the southerly is more influential in sending the fire in a different direction towards the north. and that has eased the threat to properties, which is why we've downscaled that to watch and act. But it's still a very dynamic and volatile fireground situation. It's certainly not contained, which is why we've kept it at the watch and act alert level, so people need to remain vigilant. But the immediate risk or the concern to impacting on populated centres has eased with the change in the wind direction, and particularly following the passage of the front moving further north up the coast.
So as that southerly moves up north, will that ease other fires, or?
Southerly changes through firegrounds initially present problems and dangers because it increases the volatility, it changes fire direction, it increases fire behaviour. Once we get the passage well and truly moved through, whether that takes an hour or 2 or 3, we generally see a stabilising of the conditions one way or another, whether it just means the fire is going to continue to spread in a northerly direction, which is a real concern, for example, around the Tarmoor area. If that fire continues to be influenced in a northerly direction, it's likely to impact the community of Tarmoor this afternoon or tonight, but we've really got to see what the effect of that change is on that fire ground. And then, of course, as it moves further up towards the Gospers fire, we can expect to see some increase in volatility and a change in the direction of fire burning up around particularly the Bells Line of Road area. So we've still got many hours of fire activity to be undertaken throughout this afternoon before we can say we can take an easing of the conditions.
On the Gospers mountain fire, so which direction or directions are most at risk then?
So effectively the most activity that we've got is right out to the south and southwest of that fire, so everywhere from Lithgow, Wallerawang, up the Bells Line of Road to places like Clarence, Dargan, Bell, and then all the way along the Bells Line of Road. Communities like Mount Wilson, Mount Irvine, Bilpin, Itchenstoke, all those areas, Mount Tomah, that's where the potential is with that fire activity, whether it's being driven in a westerly, by a westerly wind in an easterly direction, or indeed whether the southerly change pushes the fire to the south of the Bells Line of Road back in towards the settled areas on the Bells Line of Road itself.
You mentioned that some of the buildings and homes that might have been destroyed in the Green Wattle Creek fire area are those belonging to firefighters themselves. Do you know how crews are feeling about that when they're out fighting fires and losing their own homes?
The feedback I've got is they're shattered, as you would expect them to be, and I've been speaking to our team down there, and absolutely they're shattered, but they know there's a job to do, and they're continuing to get out there and try and save and protect as many and as much of the other infrastructure and valuable assets throughout their local community. So naturally, they and their families and their colleagues are truly devastated by the loss. They're devastated by loss no matter what, but it just goes that little further when it's your own home or the colleague you've got sitting on the fire truck next to you having lost their home while they're out saving others. So it's a tough afternoon. It'll be another very emotional, very draining day for our firefighters with the conditions that they're facing.
And have you heard how the other crews are being affected by the injuries to that crew in the Bargo area?
Again, we saw a tremendous response, professionalism, first aid, rendering support, but obviously it takes a toll on everybody because it's a sobering reminder of the dangers that our firefighters confront every day with these operations. Very dry, very volatile conditions, fanned by very hot, dry winds, is dangerous.